The winter was cold and relentless that year. Snow was falling as if trying to hide everything from sight. The frost bit into my skin, seeping through the gaps in my old coat. I always considered myself a rational person, but that day, when I found myself standing in front of the old abandoned building, even my ironclad logic couldn't explain what happened. The mansion stood on a hill, surrounded by ominous pines. Its windows were dark, like empty eye sockets, and it seemed as though the building itself was watching me, inviting me inside. I approached, climbed the creaky wooden steps, and pushed the massive door. It opened reluctantly, releasing a stream of stale, cold air into the world. Inside, it was dark, but the moonlight streaming through the cracks in the windows allowed me to make out the shapes of antique furniture and curtains. I didn't know what exactly I was looking for in that house. Maybe it was just curiosity, or perhaps a desire to test my nerves. But with every step forward, I felt more and more that I was falling into a trap. The floorboards creaked underfoot, the echo of my steps reverberating through the empty halls. Old portraits with faded faces hung on the walls. Their eyes followed me wherever I went, and there was something disturbing about it. Suddenly, I heard a strange sound. It was coming from upstairs. I froze, listening. It wasn't just a noise, it was something like a rustle or a faint whisper. As if someone was calling me. I felt chills run down my spine, but decided to go check it out. The staircase leading up was old and creaked with every step. The banister was covered in a thick layer of dust, and I couldn't help but wonder how many years had passed since someone last climbed these stairs. The upper floor was even darker and colder. The icy wind blew through broken windows, causing the curtains to billow like ghosts. I walked down a long corridor when I heard the sound again, now clearer. It was a cry, soft, plaintive, like a child calling for help. I quickened my pace, trying to understand where the sound was coming from. It led me to one of the rooms at the end of the corridor. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint light was coming from behind it. With a trembling heart, I pushed the door and entered. The room turned out to be a nursery. Old toys were scattered on the floor, and on the bed lay a doll, strikingly resembling a real girl. The crying stopped, but I still felt someone's presence. Suddenly, the doll slowly turned its head and looked at me with its glass eyes. I recoiled, not believing my eyes. But that was just the beginning. Suddenly, I felt something cold touch my hand. I looked around but saw no one. However, the sensation was so vivid that I couldn't ignore it. The room began to darken, although I hadn't noticed the light changing. Shadows thickened, seeming to crawl towards me from all sides. And then I heard a voice, soft yet filled with horror. "Help me," it whispered. "Free me." I turned around and saw a silhouette on the wall. It was a girl, about 10 years old, with long dark hair and a pale face. She stood there, looking at me with empty eyes, black tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know what to do. Panicking, I took a step back, and at that moment, the room started to change. The walls closed in, the floorboards underfoot began to crack. I felt the house had come to life and was now trying to swallow me. I rushed to the door, but it slammed shut in front of my nose. I pounded, tried to open it, but to no avail. The room filled with laughter, low and sinister. It wasn't a child's laugh, but something deeper and older. And then everything went silent. The room became ordinary again, but I knew it was just an illusion. I stood there, breathing heavily, when I heard the voice again. "Help me," it repeated. "Find her." I didn't understand whom or what I was supposed to find. But the sense of dread was so strong that I knew it wouldn't end until I fulfilled the ghost's request. Suddenly, my gaze fell on an old book lying on the shelf. It looked as though it hadn't been touched for decades. I picked it up and opened it. On the first page was a portrait of the girl, the same one I had seen on the wall. The book told me a story. The story of a family who lived in this house many years ago. Their youngest daughter, Emily, disappeared one winter. They searched for her everywhere, but never found her. The parents were heartbroken and soon also died under mysterious circumstances. The house was left empty and had since been considered cursed. I realized that Emily's spirit still resided here, bound to this place. Her soul couldn't rest because her body had never been found. I felt that I had to help her. Putting the book back, I decided to search the house. Perhaps somewhere here, I would find a clue. I spent the next few hours searching every corner of the mansion. Finally, in the basement, I came across an old chest. It was locked, but I managed to find the key in one of the books in the library. When I opened the chest, I saw inside small children's items, a dress, toys, and beneath them the remains of a girl. It was Emily. I carefully took her remains and wrapped them in an old blanket. At that moment, I heard a whisper, soft and grateful. "Thank you," said the voice. "Now I can leave." With these words, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Suddenly, the whole house was filled with light, as if sunlight had broken through the walls. I climbed back up to the upper floor and saw that the shadows had disappeared and the room was once again filled with warmth and light. I left the house, feeling a lightness in my heart. The winter was still cold, but now it didn't seem so important. I had freed the soul of a little girl and perhaps saved my own from an unknown terror. The house, once full of darkness, now seemed peaceful. I knew I would never return, but I would never forget what had happened in that forgotten mansion.